Well, hello, guys. Welcome to another edition of Full Count brought to you by SportsMemo. And I am Jeff Michaels. As always, I'm excited to be in the hosting chair for you guys today. And hey, Cleveland's the hottest team in baseball in the last 15. Sorry, I couldn't avoid sneaking that one in there. But I'm honored to be joined by one of the hottest panels in the business at the moment with the Doctor and the Iceman. And no, we're not talking about a new Marvel movie. Doctor versus Iceman's going to have to wait a little bit for the big screen because today we got 3 roundtable games and some best bet action for you today. But as always, guys, it's a pleasure. Dr. Chuck, how are you doing on this Friday?
Doing good. We were just talking off air. It's amazing. I love that you brought up the Guardians. We were talking about another Cleveland team that is the most aberrant game of the year away from being 3-0. Can you believe that? That's nuts, right?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna hold my hopes on this playoff run right now and see what happens with these Guardians until I have a little confidence in what we can see and have some consistency from our team. But Jesse, not even Friday there for you anymore. So how are you doing this morning?
I'm all about the Guardians myself. I had them last night, had them the night before. I don't have them tonight though, but it's early yet. I still have time to put out a play on them.
Yeah, they've been exciting to watch. But guys, without any further ado, there's plenty of other games on the card for you today, and we got 3 big ones to break down for you. A couple of them with some playoff implications. I mean, guys, game number 1 today, we're looking at Houston taking on the Orioles. And Houston's just one of 2 teams so far that have clinched a first-round bye in the playoffs. They've clinched the AL West. And Baltimore may be all but out of it at this point. But this is the first time since 2016, outside of the COVID year, that Baltimore hasn't finished in last place in the AL East. Houston has Urquidy on the mound today. He struggled in his last 3 starts. But Houston's 10-4 in his starts on the road this year, while Baltimore throws Dean Kramer, who's gotten the Orioles a win in his last 6 straight outings. You know, Baltimore's playoff hopes have pretty much all but diminished at this point, and Houston's playing for a lot of momentum. But crazy one out there that I'll lead you off with that I saw this morning. You know, Baltimore is 0-7 this season when Santana hit multiple home runs in a game. How do you do that when somebody comes up and hits multiple dingers? But hey, he's only done it 7 times. Who's to say that'll be a take on tonight's game? But Dr. Chuck, what are you looking at on this Houston-Baltimore game tonight?
Yeah, it's interesting how much there's a lot to unpack about a Houston-Baltimore game in late September. It's kind of fun. I was putting the numbers together as to how poorly Baltimore finished last season and how they played in the second half of this season, and it's kind of amazing. But what Bradish did last night was unbelievable, and it's hard to follow that stuff up. And you mentioned Dean Kramer. I give the Orioles a lot of crap on this show and just in general about being that team that doesn't have the pitching staff to follow through with the young offensive talent that if you were to combine the offense and the defense pitching staff of Miami and Baltimore, you'd have a super team. But the stuff Bradish did last night is exactly why people are bullish on the guy. It's hard to back a team, no matter if it's the Astros or not, it's hard to back a team coming off of being just annihilated like that on the road. And in fact, it's happened just 20 times this season. The team in the Astros spots only won 7 of those 20 games outright, no matter if they're favored or not. And they are favored again, which is another interesting spot because it's a spot that only a couple teams find themselves in. And Baltimore is one of them. The Rockies are the other that happen to be off of a win by multiple runs at home, dog again. And it's not often that's going to be the case. Astros are one of them. You know, they're the best team in September, even better than the Dodgers with a 15-5 record. I can't imagine. I make it a rule not to back a team that was just shut out as badly as being 2 hit, with one of those hits coming with 2 outs in the 9th inning. There were basically 1 hit in the game last night, and it was just a gentle single to left field. And so it's not something that just turns around like on a dime. Dean Kramer is a good, solid pitcher to follow Bradish. He's also an under pitcher, 5 overs, 12 unders in his last 17 starts. And so I think I think it's a good look at the under here. Urquidy just needs to, keep the Orioles at bay, but it's not like it was a 9-0 game. It was 2-0. And so makes it even more something I like the under, and getting the hook on this. If you can find an 8 out there, it's a big unit play in my book. And so I like the under here. I think it's another 2-0, 3-1 type game. And the Astros slowly get into it as the series goes on. But the Orioles haven't fared well in that spot I mentioned. They're just 5-9 straight up. So that's another thing to look at.
Yeah, no, I like it. I saw one of the things that caught my attention too was those 8 home starts that I mentioned from Kramer. He's just 1-7 over under. So I was almost thinking that way too. Jesse, what are you looking at? You got an eye on the total, or are you looking for a side in this matchup tonight?
You know me, I like those Orioles, and as much as they probably are out of it, 4 games back, Tampa and Toronto have not been as good as you'd expect them to have been lately. I think Baltimore still has plenty to play for in their own minds anyways. And as Chuck mentioned, Kramer, he's been pretty solid of late, 2-1 with a 3.03 ERA in his last 5. One of those was a 3-1 win at Houston. Urquidy, 12 runs on 17 hits in 11 innings in losses to Oakland and the Angels. So it's not like this guy's getting roughed up by the Yankees and the Dodgers. I mean, he's been giving up a lot to pretty subpar lineups. Baltimore has actually won 6 of the last 7 head-to-head versus Houston, getting them as a home dog, considering that Houston really could afford to rest players. Houston's not really fighting for anything right now. I mean, they're not going to catch the Yankees, the Yankees aren't going to catch them. And yeah, I mean, I'll take Baltimore as the home dog here.
Oh, and I don't want to interrupt, Jeff, but I forgot to mention, and Jesse almost brought it up. They've only played 4 times. Last night was the 4th game. 12 runs have been scored in those games total. They've slam dunked all 4 unders, and the most runs scored in the game was 4. So that's how that series has gone this season. It's just not, and Bradish has 2 very similar wins.
Hey, and that could be another one in the books for you tonight with another exciting pitching matchup. But Jesse segued us perfectly into game number 2, I think. It means something else when you talk about that Baltimore may not quite be completely out of the playoff run, but you have the 2 teams that they're chasing facing off against each other as well in this Toronto and Tampa Bay series, which, like I said, leads us perfectly into the second game of our round table. And this is an exciting divisional matchup in the thick of that wild card chase. Both teams look to be in the playoffs. Again, not guaranteed as we close out the season, but right now they're playing for positioning and standing in those chases. Whether you're going to be playing a Cleveland team might not be all that much of a downside playing a divisional champ as opposed to playing another wild card team. But that seems to be most of the extent of what this series is going to be for. Toronto sends their trade deadline acquisition, Mitch White, to the mound, who's struggled recently in his last 3 starts. Those 3 starts have come against Baltimore, the Cubs, and the Angels. And Tampa has their stud lefty on the mound in Jeffrey Springs. He's 8-4 this year with a 2.68 ERA. But I do always like to look at the team record in his games to see how they can back him up after that. They're 8-2 in his 10 home starts. They're 6-1 in his last 7 starts overall, including 4 straight. And Spring only has 1 loss at home against the division this season. Jesse, you talked about those Orioles. This game has some significance to those Orioles moving forward in the playoffs. What do you got your eye on in this Tampa-Toronto matchup tonight?
Well, one of the reasons the Orioles aren't completely out of it is the Jays are 6-6 in their last 12. Tampa's 4-4 in their last 8. They're playing 500 ball, which is okay, but it's not good enough to put away those teams that are trying to chase them down, which the Orioles are trying to do. But this particular game, when I saw the Rays open as a slight favorite, I was quite shocked because, as you mentioned, Jeff Springs, very good at home, 4-2 with a 1.94 ERA in 10 home starts. He's 3-1 with a 2.39 ERA in his last 5 starts overall. Tampa is just a very strong home team, and the Jays 1-7 in their last 8 versus left-handed starters. Of course, Tampa took game one. I'm going to roll with Tampa. I think they're undervalued here at this price.
Yeah, I find it hard to disagree in any sense. But hey, that's why we got three people on the panel. Dr. Chuck, you agreeing with us, or are we rolling a different road with you tonight in this game?
Well, I suppose that's why you got me on the show here. And I guess it doesn't have to be that serious because I'm on the Blue Jays run line. Basically, Jesse brought it up. Neither team is really sprinting to the finish line by any means. We got about a dozen games left, and both these teams need them all. And the Blue Jays are just 7-9 against the Rays on the season. But so much of what goes into both of these teams in this spot tonight speaks to one-run games, and it's kind of nuts. The Rays, off of a series win as a home favorite, are 31-12. But 12 of those 31 wins were just by one run, and they did. 12 of them were not. They only covered the run line 20 times, and it's pretty interesting that the Blue Jays are this big of a dog. And Jesse said that it kind of made him raise his eyebrows. Well, they haven't been this big of a dog in an entire month. And when they are this big of a dog, it's only been 10 times this season. They're 8-2 straight up, 10-0 against the run line. And I'm not a big Mitch White fan, but I definitely trust the Blue Jays offense more. The rich get richer. They add Merrifield, and they're already loaded, and they're off of allowing 21 runs in the last two losses to the Rays, and I think it just has to stop. Jeffrey Springs is not somebody I like to fade, but I don't know if I'm necessarily fading it, getting a pretty decent price on the run line here where the Rays are, in the trop, and, the Jays are in the trop, and it's just, 4-3 loss. You guys win, I win, we all win. That sounds good. But I don't understand why this line is what it is. And so that makes me go the other way, like Jesse was saying. So I just think if I had to pick a team to win the game, I'm picking the Jays, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to take them on the run line.
Hey, we showed you last week, I believe Joe D'Amico and we showed you multiple cappers can have multiple different viewpoints and you can still win. Even I was looking, Toronto is 11-19 in the games when they've taken on a left-handed starting pitcher, but they're only losing those games by just under one run a game. So it seems like an opportunity to be able to jump on both sides. So
10-0, right?
Yeah, exactly. Plenty of opportunity to cash in on plenty of different viewpoints and plenty of different games. So, hey, that may be the most exciting one in terms of playoff implications. But, guys, we still got one more roundtable game for you. And this one, again, between two playoff teams as we look forward into October. And I mentioned earlier, the Astros were just one of two teams that have clinched a first-round bye. Well, the second team on that list are these LA Dodgers taking on St. Louis tonight. And the Cardinals now sit atop the NL Central. They're 7.5 games that get up on the Brewers. And today the two division leaders square off head to head. St. Louis has lost 3 of their last 4 games, and LA has dropped 2 of their last 3. But both of these teams are coming off of 1-run wins in their last game. St. Louis sends Quintana to the mound. The lefty's just 1-2 on the road this season with a 4.30 ERA, but his team's 8-4 in his 12 starts, getting a decision in just 3 of those games. But in the last 3 outings, again, he hasn't faced the most impressive of competition, but his stats have been very impressive, allowing just 2 earned runs in those 3 starts. And the Dodgers are also throwing a lefty tonight in Andrew Heaney. Heaney's 3-2 with a 2.66 ERA on the year, but his team's 10-3 in his starts on the season. This is the 3rd time this year Quintana's faced off against the Dodgers. He's 1-0, but the team's walked away with wins in both of those meetings, and he's allowed just 2 combined earned runs. Dr. Chuck, what do you think on this one? Did the Cardinals extend their lead, and can Quintana secure his 3rd win against the Dodgers this season?
Yeah, you brought it up. It's kind of a weird thing, right? It doesn't feel like the Dodgers, they have 104 wins. It doesn't feel like they've lost much. So it's weird that a starter like that has picked them off a couple times. I can't. I find it so hard when I see, and I try to make a promise to myself that there's no auto fades, but when I see Andrew Haney on the Wager Talk odds page, it's hard for me not to think, all right, how am I going to figure out how to pick against him? Well, I mean, the Dodgers had a crazy week against the D-backs. It was all over the place. They're getting hammered in one game, and then they score 5 in the bottom of the 8th to shell shock the D-backs. At the top of the 9th, they come back and lose. They come back and lose the second leg of the doubleheader with Tyler Anderson on the mound, and then it's just I don't know where they go from here because the competition is so much raised tonight with the Cardinals, and the Cardinals just do what the Cardinals do. I almost wonder if they're winning too much. Maybe a la last year, Marmol needs to watch out for his job because, they're the second best team down the stretch after the All-Star break. They kind of just, I think, are shocking the Brewers that this isn't even a race anymore. We have a lot of decent races going on, and I can't believe the NL Central isn't one. I find it hard not to back the Cardinals here, even though they stayed on the West Coast and just had a Padres series. But they got that win when it looked like they could have been swept. And I just think the Dodgers aren't playing whatever the Diamondbacks are. They're not what the Diamondbacks were earlier in the season. And I just have not been impressed with this version of the Dodgers down the stretch. Little bit too fat and happy the way they've played this week, I think. And even with Quintana, I'd gladly take the dog here. It kind of reeks a little bit too. The Dodgers, no matter who they've played, have always been pretty decent sized favorites. It's a pretty small line for the Dodgers at Chavez Ravine here. And so just head scratching. I mean, you have to really pepper the books to figure out a way to back the Dodgers anyway, because Jesse and I do like favorites, but we don't like 350 favorites. And so this might be a spot if you just want to back the Dodgers, you back them because it's not so big. But I'll be on either the Cardinals or the Cardinals run line here. And I think even though I don't like Haney, I'd probably lean towards an under.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about some of these games, and I do like Charlie's question. I'm going to bounce back. I'm going to bounce over to Jesse first, and then we'll get back to that comment down there. But Jesse, what are you thinking the same way? Is this favorite line or this money line too good to be true in this one?
Well, yeah, I agree with Chuck when he says the line stinks. You probably notice, or maybe you won't notice, but I haven't been involved in a Dodgers game since the first half of the season. They're the best team in baseball. As much as I like to bet on favorites, I like to get value when I'm betting, whether that's a heavy favorite or a big dog. And there's just not a lot of value in betting betting on the best team in baseball because everybody wants to do it. And there's no value in betting against a team that wins all the time. So the Dodgers are just a no-go for me. I don't bet on them. I don't bet against them. It's just a losing proposition for me. So, and the Cards, I mean, they're going to win their division. The Dodgers going to have the best record. Who's playing for what? I don't know. The only thing I could look at in this game is the total. And because this isn't really a must-win game for either team, it's the kind of game where I would strut out my starter and I wouldn't let him throw 100 pitches. You know what I mean? As soon as he gets in a bit of a jam in the 5th inning, I'd rather pull him. Both these teams are going to be in the postseason. Both these teams need their big arms healthy. And as far as using up your bullpen, maybe use guys that haven't been used much lately, that you throw a guy out there, let him give up a couple hits and you don't really care. So I'm looking at the over here just for the simple fact that there's really not a lot for either of these teams to really fight for right now.
Yeah, and you said it. The Dodgers are one of those teams that maybe more than anybody need to worry about keeping their arms healthy with the multitude of injuries that they've been, dealt with throughout the entirety of the season, with one person going after another. But go ahead, Dexter.
One thing to what Jesse said, and you don't have to full screen me or anything. It's just I keep track of just the profit, and I don't know if you guys keep an SDQL just running. Jesse brings it up. I mean, this team has 104 wins. They could probably get 110 wins easily. $100 bettors are up a dime. I mean, that's insane. If you $100 better on the Orioles are up $3,000. On the Guardians, they're up about $1,800, and they have 30 and 20 less wins. It's just, it's just not. I mean, you'd still be up a dime, so good for you. But I mean, some of those losses are going to hurt.
Yeah, finding the value, which leads me, I wanted to jump over to Charlie's comments or comments down there. Jesse, I'll kick it over to you first, but it says, should we become more selective betting on the MLB as it gets closer to the end of the regular season? Does the viewpoint change as we get to the end?
I'm really selective right now. I mean, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3 plays a week. I mean, yeah, there's really nothing for me to gain by loading up a full baseball card on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'll look to play 2 or 3 games over the weekend and really sparse throughout the week. It'll have to be a perfect situation for me to be interested at all, especially in games like this one, St. Louis and LA. I mean, like I said, what are they playing for?
Yeah,
absolutely. And to that point, exactly what Charlie means is we just talked about a couple teams. You mentioned 2 teams we talked about are slam dunk home bye favorites. The Dodgers don't want to have Haney in their playoff rotation. The Blue Jays don't want to have Mitch White in their playoff rotation. And the Cardinals would love for Jose Quintana not to be in their playoff rotation. And so, you have to take those into account as we're going forward. How these teams are going to act. I mean, obviously they still have to win these games, but it's different as we're looking forward.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems, at least in what I've noticed in the last couple of days, it seems like some of these money lines and some of these lines that are coming out are almost solely based off of starting pitchers and pitching performances and whatnot, because that's the only justification that I can see to that Toronto Tampa Bay game, for instance, with Jeffrey Spring and Mitch White, that you do have to start looking at a situation a little more than and what they're playing for, as opposed to just what 2 teams are on the field. So I think there's still opportunities to cash, but I definitely think there's a different viewpoint that we take looking ahead into the playoffs as we do at the beginning of the season, without question. But guys, that concludes our 3 round table games, but that definitely isn't the end of the show, because the best bets are coming, and that's what everybody comes here to see. We got 2 of the hottest cappers on the site recently, and I know it's baseball season, but Jesse, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you got over on the premium site, or what you might be looking forward to this weekend. And of course, follow that up with your best bet for the show today.
All right. Well, first of all, if you don't follow me on Twitter, at Jesse Schule, follow me. You'll enjoy it. So I swept the board last Saturday and Sunday, 3-0 with college, 3-0 with NFL, and it's becoming a bit of a tradition. If I have a perfect card, I like to dress up in my yellow jumpsuit, put on my blonde wig, and pretend I'm Mr. Perfect for the day. So we're hoping to pull that thing out again this weekend. We'll see how it goes. As far as my best bet, I like picking low-hanging fruit. And today's card, I looked at today's card, thought, what's the low-hanging fruit? And I'm looking at the Brewers and the Cincinnati Reds. We talked about what our team's playing for at this point. The Brewers are on the bubble. They really need to string some wins together if they're going to actually clinch a wild card spot, whereas the Reds, they're 3-11 in their last 14 overall. They're not really playing for much these days. What I really liked about this game was Mike Minor was going to get the start for Cincinnati. He's winless at home all year. He's been scratched. Luis Cessa is going to go, and he's not much better. 1-1 with a 7.24 ERA in 19 appearances, the majority of those coming out of the bullpen. Eric Lauer is going to go for the Brewers. He skipped his last start with elbow soreness. He's got solid numbers. He's 2-0 with a 3.38 ERA in 2 starts versus the Reds this year. The Reds have lost 6 of their last 7 home games. It's just a matter of one team needs this win, one team doesn't. One team's a little better than the other, and giving us a fair price, I think. So I'll take the Brewers.
Absolutely. I like it. Just like we said, what comes down to what teams are playing for as well. But Dr. Chuck, how about you? I know you've been riding hot recently on all the leaderboards that I've seen. So why don't you fill us in on your action for this weekend and get into your best bet for the show today?
Yeah, it had been a while since I could have donned the Kurt Hennig Iceman suit. And yesterday, actually, MLB was one of those cases. We went 3-0 and looking to build on that again today. As we went on air, I was incredibly sweating out our top tennis play, and it lost in the 3rd set tiebreak. But we're going to come right back with our top tennis plays, and semifinals and finals in all 4 tournaments are coming up. Plus, we're off of our best college football, just football period week, and we're going to get right back at it. Decent sized card, and I think a lot of value on the college football Saturday all day long. I don't know if I have anything as big as how much I loved Oregon last week, but that doesn't matter because there's still a lot of plus EV action out there. And Jesse brought up low-hanging fruit. And to his point, real fast before I get to mine, I think low-hanging fruit got better for the Brewers and with Sessa and not Minor for this hopefully not 100-loss team. But I'm looking over on the West Coast with a couple of teams that are flying into Arizona and facing off. Diamondbacks, I already mentioned, are off a 5-game series this week with the Dodgers. They won 2 of them, split that doubleheader that day. I think it was Tuesday. They split the doubleheader, and they left LA, fly into Arizona. San Francisco left Colorado. Never a good situation when you come out of Colorado as far as my VMI and ADI stats go. They got a -14 VMI again today. If you haven't, make sure that you make baseballvmi.com a favorite bookmark on your computer. It's unbelievable as far as finding baseball value. Carlos Rodon, what can you say about Carlos Rodon? The dude's a stud. He's probably making his second to last start for the Giants here, and he will make a lot of money this fall, as he should. A good lineup value against him facing the D-backs, even though he doesn't get runs scored for him, which is part of the reason that I love the under first 5 here, which you're going to get 4, and right now it's normal vig. There were 3.5s, went up to 4. 4 under went up in price, and now has dropped down. Great value here. 4 is worst case scenario by my numbers is a push. But, I like Tommy Henry, honestly, to get the Giants here because of the way that he's a tight pitcher, throws a 4-seamer. Giants are going to be able to hit that. Giants are unbelievably tricky to figure out because they win 4, lose 4, win 4. They're off of 4 wins in a row at Coors. And you'd think, well, they'll probably just keep that going. Well, that's not the way that this works. And especially it's not the way that works with the way you see the ball when you leave Coors. And so I think this could even be 0-0, I think, after 5 innings. And that's kind of crazy, but I would have played this at 3.
I like it. That I do. That gives you more of a reason to go out. See, plenty of different angles to take on similar games and plenty of different opportunities to cash in. And there's another for you on a first 5 total. But guys, I'm the last one on the list, but I still got another best bet for you. Guys, we've been hot on college football plays. Number 1 on SportsMemo in the last 365 days on plays 3 units or higher, up nearly 100 units over that span. And I do have some Friday action for college football up for you tonight. It's actually linked in with my package for tomorrow. So go and jump on that Friday game, and you're going to get all of Saturday's card too. But I do have my top baseball play up for you as well over on the premium site if you want to go check that out. But as far as my best bet goes on this one, Charlie, I guess we could have skipped over your question because I think our best bet may kind of show you how you want to be a little more selective. We're looking at pitchers. We're looking at teams that are playing for certain situations and other teams that are not. And that's exactly what I'm jumping on here too. I'm taking the Mets on the run line tonight against an Oakland team that seemingly has nothing left to play for, obviously. New York was riding one of the best records in the MLB for a while, but with the division they're in, they're still fighting for their position with the Braves, meaning they have something to play for in this game, whereas a lot of others don't. They sent Bassett to the mound tonight. He's an incredible 21-7 on the run line against teams under 500 in the last 2 years. And he's 12-0 as an away favorite when the run line price is between +130 and -255 as an away favorite, as I mentioned. And that is run line price, not money line price over the last 2 years. But, Oakland's bullpen got hit heavy in their last game against Seattle. They struggle to bounce back off of a situation like that. They're just 5-13 on the run line this year when their bullpen was hit for 4 or more earned runs. And they're losing those games by over 3 runs per game. Not to mention that the Mets, this is the first game of the series, but in the Mets' last game, they were shut out. And they've had 4 straight run line wins after getting shut out, seeing is that's not something that happens too often to this Mets team. They haven't done it in over a month. And they've put up 26 runs in their last 5 games. And yeah, that includes their last game where they got shut out. So I expect a bounce back win from an offense that has been hot. Oakland's been pretty good behind Irvin, but he's allowed 30 earned runs in his last 7 starts with a 6.28 ERA. And they've covered the run line in a chunk of those games, but it's because they haven't gone against the best of opponents, and they've been able to put up some runs to compete with that number. But Bassett's dominated on the road this season, and I don't foresee that being a situation for them tonight. So I do like the Mets on the run line tonight, getting them at just minus 120, minus that 1.5 against a struggling Oakland team is another low-hanging fruit that I'm swinging for, in my opinion. So, but guys, that's what we got for you today on our show, and that's the baseball action for you this week. Plenty of action on the card, so we'll be back at it next week with some more baseball for you as we close out the regular season. But on behalf of myself, the doctor, and the Iceman, Jesse Schule down there, and everyone else over at SportsMemo, guys, thanks for watching. And don't forget, before you go, hit that like and subscribe button. Get those numbers up to 10K before football season's over. That's the next goal for you. But thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next week.